Hey everyone, Ariel Adams here with aBlogtoWatch. Please subscribe to our videos on YouTube and like this video if you find it useful. This is a review of the Glashutte Original 70s Chronograph Panorama date. This is the more complicated version of the 70s Panorama date. This watch came out, I want to say around 2011 or so originally, in a three-hand form that had a big date indicator. And then in about 2014, I believe, Glashutte Original came out with this chronograph version, and I think this is a great watch. It's my favorite version. It comes with a few different dials. There is a silvery white dial. There's, I think, a gray dial. There's this blue dial. They'll probably come out with more in the future. Glashutte makes their own dials. They have a factory in Pforzheim, which is in a different part of Germany than Glashutte, and they own that factory and they make them. So they do a really nice job on dials. And what's great about that, you can tell on the big date indicator, they call it the panorama date, the color of the discs matches the dial, and that's a little detail, something that watch lovers appreciate. If you're buying a watch at this level, you're definitely going to look for a detail like that. And sometimes those, date discs don't match, and the reason that the date discs don't match is oftentimes because it's not the brand itself which is making parts like the dial, and so it costs them a lot of money to go through a supplier and have all those parts made. So that's just an interesting thing. So I'm just sort of showing you some of the dial details there. There's a watch actually from the 70s that this watch is based on. That watch, I've seen it before in Glashutte. They have a nice museum there, and you can see that watch. There's all kinds of wild, interesting designs from the 60s and 70s that Glashutte made. Interestingly enough, under GDR control, when the state, when it was in Saxony, which was part of East Germany at the time, and it was communist controlled, and it was a state-owned watchmaker. Yet, despite that, they made a lot of interesting, cool, wild stuff with fun case shapes and colors and things like that. So this is a design that came out of that era. There's sort of this subset of collectors or watch collectors that like Russian Soviet watches. This is, of course, a German watch, so it's not a Soviet watch, strictly speaking, but it was a design that theoretically came out of that era. So I just think that's interesting. A lot of people call this a TV screen, so it looks like an old TV screen with that kind of rounded square. It is a square case, cushion style, because it's curved, 40 millimeters wide by 40 millimeters tall. A little bit of a thicker case there because of the chronograph movement, but it is really a fantastic movement. The bracelet here is really, really nice. Polished center link, no gaps of any kind. There's an interesting system here. So you know how I like to keep plastic on there. It's always quirky. Get the focus in there. So there's these little dots in there you can see. And what you would do is you would push on there with a tool which would release the links so that you could lengthen or shorten the bracelet, which is great. This watch comes on a rubber strap or an alligator strap, but I honestly think that it looks much, much better on the bracelet. This has a micro adjust here, so the Glashutte double G logo is the pusher, and you push it down, and you can see here that the bracelet opens up. It's got a nice ratcheting sense to it, so you can close it while you're wearing it. Let's hear that again. I love that noise. I'm going to open it up all the way and show you. I'm going to clean off the back there. You can see the movement. This is the in-house made caliber 37-02 movement. Really nice movement. So it begins by being a 3/4 plate movement, which is a sort of traditional Glashutte region Dresden style. It's really for durability. It means that you can see a little bit less of the movement, but it is going to be a little bit more durable. There you can see the regulation system there and the balance wheel spinning. The balance wheel has screws in it, so you can really finely adjust it. And then you can see that near the escapement there's also a swan neck fine adjuster. So between being able to adjust the weight of the screws on the balance wheel and the swan neck fine adjuster, a watchmaker can really tweak the accuracy of the movement. There's a gold weight on the automatic rotor there, and it's an overall very lovely movement. Operationally, it's got some cool features to it, and there's no other watches I know that have exactly the same features. So this is a full 12-hour chronograph with a power reserve indicator and a big date. So I'm going to adjust the time just so you can see some of these things a little bit better here. So I'm going to adjust the time. Okay, so if you look under the Glashutte Original logo, there is a small disc with an arrow at the bottom of it. That is the hour counter. So I'm going to start the chronograph here. By the way, it is not only a column wheel controlled chronograph, it's a flyback chronograph, and a flyback chronograph means that you can reset it without stopping it first. So I'm going to push the reset button here, and you can see it just immediately goes to begin again. Flyback chronographs are just going to be a little bit more complicated and thus a little bit more expensive and thus prestigious than your sort of normal run-of-the-mill chronograph. So the reason Glashutte Original designed it this way is they wanted to give it a nice clean bicompax look rather than having three subdials. So you have a disc system there to measure the running hours. Then you have a traditional dial for the minutes, chronograph seconds hand, running seconds indicator, big date indicator, and then right there inside of the running seconds indicator is a power reserve indicator. This the movement operates at 4 Hertz. It has 3 days of power reserve, and you can see how that white area is disappearing as I manually wind the movement. I love power reserve indicators, especially when they're discrete. A downside of this type of display is you do have to have quite good vision. I thankfully have good vision. I laser the hell out of my eyes, and I'll do it again if I need to because it was great. But if you're someone who doesn't have very clear vision, you'll be able to read the hands just fine. You'll probably be able to read the date, but when it comes to smaller things like the power reserve indicator or the hours counter for the chronograph, you might not be able to do that. So you do have to have pretty good vision for this watch, but there are many watches in the watch industry that you have to have pretty good vision. So let's put this watch on, because I want to talk about the overall design of the case. Having a watch that is not round but still looks good is difficult to do. There are not that many great non-round watch designs out there. I would consider this to be a very successful one. Now, the trick to having a good non-round watch is making sure that it has not only a harmonious design, but organic curves that go with the natural curves of your body. And that's very, very important. So when I saw this watch off the wrist, I thought one thing about it, like, oh, that's interesting. But then when I saw it on the wrist, especially on the bracelet, because it's so nicely integrated, I said, wow, that is a very sexy design. And so this is distinctive looking, meaning there's not really that much else out there that looks quite like this. It is sporty, but also definitely retro, because again, it is called the 70s, and it wants the brand wants to sort of remind you of some of those nostalgic elements. The polished hands and the sort of diminutive hour markers and things like that kind of all go into a little bit of a dressy look. And so you have a very successful combination of distinctive looks, nice curves, non-round shape, sporty functionality, but with sort of an elegant dressiness to it. And that's a very complicated assortment of things to build into one design. And I think the Glashutte Original did that very well. So in my opinion, this is a distinctive looking sporty watch that's non-round, but also sexy. And when I say sexy, I guess what I'm really trying to say is that it's the type of thing that is fashionable and lends itself to a handsome presentation. There's a lot of awesome watches out there that I like to say you wouldn't want to go on a date with. And I'm sure I pissed some people off saying that. But I think the idea is that if you're a guy and you want to go on a date, you definitely you don't want your watch to turn off the other person. Ideally, it's a plus factor. And there's a lot of watches out there that are kind of just nerdy watches that might look interesting to other watch collectors, but don't have sex appeal. And I do think that a watch like the 70s Chronograph does have a nice sex appeal to it because it has an elegant character. And I did just want to say, like, oh, it's sexy. I tried to do my best to explain what I thought by that. I'm sure that everyone's going to have their own opinion. But again, the overall harmony of the design, little things like the way the chronograph pushers are designed. There's a crown guard there. The contrast polishing. You have a nice brush side and a polished bezel. Just an overall good-looking watch. And the hands are the right size. There's, as you can see, good amount of luminant on the hands. There's little dots of luminant around the periphery of the hour markers. not going to be the most legible watch at night if you want sort of a full lume display, but that's a small sacrifice. And again, it is a sacrifice in the sense that it offers more elegance to it because there isn't as much sort of like high contrast with a lume. So I think Glashutte Original made some of the right design choices and sacrifices because you can't do everything, and overall came up with something very successful for the 70s Chronograph Panorama date. So it's not a watch that has everything, but it sure has a lot. And I think that it has its quirks, but is overall a very successful design, and I like it. All these detailing and this good quality and this nice movement do come at a price. This is not a particularly inexpensive watch, but there is a lot of bang for your buck. Price for the Glashutte Original 70s Chronograph Panorama date on the matching steel bracelet, it retails for $16,400, but it is a very fine timepiece, definitely something that I think is sort of unrepresented in a lot of sort of collectors' minds. Glashutte Original does a lot of fantastic things, definitely a brand that a lot of people in the know enjoy. Overall, watches from the Dresden and Saxony region, of course, in Glashutte itself, are very coveted. So great timepiece, and you can see the full review on aBlogtoWatch.